Copts have a long history as a minority among Egypt's Muslim majority. While an integral part of ancient Egyptian society converted to Islam, Copts remained culturally and religiously distinct from the comrades. The question of Coptic identity was never raised before the rise of pan-Arabism under Nasser in the early 1950s. Up to that point, Egyptian nationalism was the major form of expression for Egyptian identity, and both Egyptian Muslims and Egyptian Christians viewed themselves as only Egyptians without any Arab sentiment. The struggle to ascertain this Egyptian identity began as Nasser and his regime tried to impose an Arab identity on the country, and attempted to erase all references to Egypt as a separate and unique entity. Today, Copts and many Egyptian Muslims reject Arab nationalism, emphasizing indigenous Egyptian heritage and culture as well as their own unique ethnicity and genetic makeup, which are completely different from those of the Arabs. Copts as Egyptians. The term Copt designates the native population of Egypt, as opposed to the various invaders or settlers who came to Egypt from other countries. The word Copt was adopted in English in the 17th century, from New Latin Coptis, Coftis, which is derived from Arabic collective Qubt, Qibt. The Copts with an isba adjective Kibti, Kibti, plural Akbar, also Kafti, Kifti, Arabic F, representing historical Coptic P, an Arabization of the Coptic word Kibtian or Coptian. The Coptic word is in turn an adaptation of the Greek alpha gamma upsilon pi tau iota omicron sigma Egyptian. After the Muslim conquest of Egypt, the term Copt became restricted to those Egyptians adhering to the Christian religion, in their own Coptic language, which represents the final stage of the Egyptian language. The Copts referred to themselves as Rem en Kem, Lem en Kemi, Rem en Kemi, which literally means people of Egypt, or Egyptians, cf. Egyptian RMTNKMT, Demotic RMTNKMI. In the 20th century, some Egyptian nationalists and intellectuals began using the term Copt in the historical sense. For example, Marcos Pasha Semika, founder of the Coptic Museum, addressed a group of Egyptian students in these words: "All of you are Copts. Some of you are Muslim Copts, others are Christian Copts, but all of you are descended from the ancient Egyptians." Copts take particular pride in their Egyptian identity. Over the centuries, they have always rejected and fought against other identities that foreign rulers attempted to force upon them, stressing their own Egyptian identity. While an integral part of the society, Copts remained culturally and religiously distinct from the surrounding Egyptian liberal age. Egypt's struggle for independence from both the Ottoman Empire and Britain was marked by secular Egyptian nationalism, also referred to as Pharaonism. When the Egyptian nationalist leader Saad Zalal met the Arab delegates at Versailles in 1918, he insisted that the struggles for statehood were not connected, stressing that the problem of Egypt was an Egyptian problem and not an Arab one. Egyptian nationalism rose to prominence in the 1920s and 1930s. It looked to Egypt's pre-Islamic past and argued that Egypt was part of a larger Mediterranean civilization. This ideology stressed the role of the Nile River and the Mediterranean Sea. It became the dominant mode of expression of Egyptian anti-colonial activists of the pre- and interwar periods. There was no place for an Arab component in the Egyptian personality at the time, and Egyptians had no Arab orientation as they saw themselves as Egyptians first and foremost, regardless of religion. Foreigners visiting Egypt noted that Egyptians did not possess any Arab sentiment in the first half of the 20th century. As one Arab nationalist of the time put it, Egyptians did not accept that Egypt was a part of the Arab lands, and would not acknowledge that the Egyptian people were part of the Arab nation. Rise of Arab nationalism. Arab nationalism began to gain grounds in Egypt in the 1940s following efforts by Syrian, Palestinian and Lebanese intellectuals. Nevertheless, by the end of the 1940s and even after the establishment of the Arab League, historian H.S. Dayton was still writing that Egyptians are not Arabs, and both they and the Arabs are aware of this fact. It was not until the Nasser era, more than a decade later, that Arab nationalism, and by extension Arab socialism, became a state policy imposed on the Egyptians by the new dictatorship. Under Nasser, Egypt united with Syria to form the United Arab Republic in 1958, then became known as the Arab Republic of Egypt in 1961. The Egyptians' attachment to Arabism, however, was particularly questioned after the 1967 Six-Day War. Thousands of Egyptians had lost their lives and the country became disillusioned with Arab politics. Nasser's successor Sadat, both through public policy and his peace initiative with Israel, revived an uncontested Egyptian orientation, unequivocally asserting that only Egypt and Egyptians were his responsibility. The terms Arab, Arabism, and Arab unity, save for the new official name, became conspicuously absent. Copts and Arab identity. While some non-Coptic authors claim that Copts in Egypt have an Arab identity while Copts in the West tend to identify as non-Arab, other non-Coptic scholars disagree, stating that Copts are not Arabs, and that they predate the Arabs' arrival to Egypt. On the other hand, almost all statements issued by Copts decry Arab nationalism. With the strong attachment to their own country, Copts have been always suspicious of Arabism, Arab socialism and pan-Arabism. They viewed Arabs as invaders and foreigners, and glorified the struggles of their ancestors against the Arab invaders between the 7th and the 9th centuries AD. Indubitably, the struggle against these foreign ideologies centered around the Coptic language. In addition, Copts resisted Arab nationalism by stressing the pre-Arab identity. They saw themselves as the direct descendants of the ancient Egyptians, and the language as a bridge linking the Copts to their ancient Egyptian roots and the civilization that span over 6,000 years. The strongest statement regarding Coptic identity came in 2008 from a prominent Coptic bishop, namely Bishop Thomas of Kusa and Mir, who gave the following speech at the Hudson Institute. Bishop Thomas' words gained widespread approval within the Coptic community. One other Coptic bishop, namely Bishop Pasenti of Helwan and Nasser, commented on the issue saying, other prominent Coptic figures who supported Bishop Thomas' statement included the Coptic writer Magdi Khalil, who wrote in El Dostor newspaper. Thus, Copts today believe that Egypt and Egyptians are simply not Arab, emphasizing indigenous Egyptian heritage and culture. The perception of their own identity and heritage can be summarized in Niloufar Harry's words.